Hello, this is Joe Peters from MomFit with Joe Peters. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network and the Hair Network and Single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Single TV app in the respective app stores, iOS and Android devices. While you are downloading, make sure that you leave a comment. The app is free. Single TV is also available to watch on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV Stick, Roku, and Roku sticks in all smart TV shows since TVs, smart TVs since 2016. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome. Happy Friday. And we have two amazing ladies to be our guests, to guide us, to inspire us, to share some of their wisdom. That is Elli and Sarah. And they are the co-founders of My Connected Motherhood. And My Connected Motherhood is a beautiful project that these two beautiful ladies had about helping moms to sleep and how to expect. And I am very happy to have them here with me because when I had my baby, I knew that I didn't want to have sleep training, but I didn't know a lot of information, and I was very blessed to find them. And they hold my 11 months through their support, through their wisdom, through their knowledge to help me to first understand what is normal and what is normal. Second, to make me feel confident that my instinct was right and that I was not self guessing what I thought was good. And then the third one, giving me simple and easy tools and tips to help me and my baby to sleep. So I love these two ladies. Elli is passionate about helping you, mama, even if you're pregnant, to understand what normal infant and toddler sleep looks like. Um, she loved to work with the families and the family pieces to help you to understand what works for your family. And Sarah is very passionate about empowering parents to follow their heart and trust their instinct. If you've been the show, you know all the time that I told you about that. Your mama instinct is there for a reason. So I am happy to have you both here. Welcome, Elli. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. And why you don't
Thank
share
you.
with us a little bit about the story of each of you and how My Connected Motherhood came into, and we will start right from there.
Okay. Do you want me to go ahead, Sarah?
Sure. Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. So we're gonna go back like a good 6 years now because our first babies are
Yeah.
turning 6 already, and it feels like we've blinked and that has happened. But when we first became moms, I'll start with my story and then toss it to Sarah. But when I first became a mom, I had no idea how much my world was about to be rocked entirely, right? I had read a book that, like, I don't even want to say what it is so nobody goes and reads it. But it was this book all about like the simple things you need to do to have the perfect sleeping child and the perfect eating child, and it made it sound so simple. And then if you didn't have those things, then it was your fault, right? And I think so many of us can relate to that, where we're trying to do the best we can for our babies, and we're looking for resources to help us, and so much of it just casts so much blame on us as parents. So I remember back then trying to read everything. Like, I think if it existed as a sleep resource back in 2016, I read it because I was trying to navigate some really tricky challenges with my son. He had a hard time settling to sleep, and he was doing what is called a split night, which is when he'd wake up in the middle of the night around 2 a.m. and stay up for 2 hours until 4 and then go back to sleep. So, needless to say, I was very exhausted. I was really frustrated though, because all the things we talk about nowadays, they didn't exist. Even the person who trained us in what we do didn't used to approach sleep in this way. But we are so happy that she figured that out, and now we are able to support so many families, because really so many families are just looking to get more sleep. And the narrative in our society right now is that the only way to do that is to sleep train your baby, and we know so many families that that just doesn't feel instinctively like the right thing to do. Um, so that's why My Connected Motherhood was kind of born out of that will and need to support parents to make those decisions that not only get them more sleep, but really feel good to them as parents. Because, we can make all sorts of changes in ways that negatively impact our relationships with our kids that don't feel good to us as parents. But we don't need to do it that way. We can actually get to where we want to be while staying true to ourselves, who we want to be as parents, and our instincts. So that's my little spiel. I'll toss it to Sarah.
Yes. So, like Ellie said, our oldest are very close in age. So, again, 6 years ago, I think one of the biggest things is normalizing it because he was actually doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. But I can vividly remember calling my husband saying, I broke our baby. He was 4 months old, only wanted to contact nap, nurse to sleep, couldn't do drowsy but awake, all of those things that now, I would feel empowered doing now that we have our third baby, right? So I think it's really important to have that information out there of what is normal and what your baby should be doing so moms don't automatically feel like they're doing something wrong. And so he was what I would call a good enough sleeper. He was sleeping 3 hours, 2 minute feed, back to sleep, all of those things. And it's just so hard to look back and think that like I felt so much guilt and failure when he was doing really well. But with our second, it was a bit of a different story. He was a bit more of a challenge, and I just sleep training didn't feel right. And I remember the certification popping up on my computer and thinking like, what? There's a different way? Like, what could that possibly be? And just being intrigued that way. And we kind of discussed it. And well, even if we could help our two kids without sleep training, it was worth taking the certification, and now it has turned into more than I ever could have imagined, which I'm so grateful for. But it's really interesting, I think, now this third time around with our youngest, how much more confidence I have and how much more enjoyable it's been, even on hard nights, with the knowledge and tools and experience I have. So, yeah, I think it's really important help moms understand what is normal so they don't automatically resort to that guilt or shame or confusion. And we just want them to know that, even when things are hard, that doesn't mean you're not doing an amazing job. Even though, you want to make changes, that's okay. Because I remember thinking too, like, well, I just have to wait it out then, right? But we don't want moms to be completely burnt out and exhausted either. And we want to be that in between where you don't have to leave your child to cry it out, but you don't also have to wait it out until you're beyond exhausted or defeated. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And you two are saying so many things that hit in my heart because there is so much pressure in society, and I want to talk and I want to hear your
Yes.
thoughts and your wisdom about this because there are so many thoughts about and I was telling Ellie before the show started, I love my Connected Motherhood post this week about, will you use a car seat from 80 years ago? No, I will never put my kid in a 8-year-old car seat. Why we are still following
Mhm.
resources and techniques and approaches that old, but then society is giving us that pressure. I remember hearing a lot about, oh, you are going to spoil him. Oh,
Yes.
oh, you need to do this because he's not going to be sleeping well after. Oh, you, and so there is a lot of guilt about what we are doing. And I
Mhm.
actually, I don't know if this happened to you ladies, but when people start talking about the sleep training and some kind of form of cry it out, for the moms that are not familiar with this, majority of sleep training are based on the concept of you need to leave your baby crying out either a long period of time, that is the most extreme one,
Yes.
or for incremental period of time that is almost the same. And my if my baby cries more than like 5 minutes, like I feel this thing in my gut that I feel like my
Mhm.
stomach is being gnawed out. So for me,
Mhm.
it was that part of saying like there is a clear contradiction between what society is telling me that I have
Mhm.
to do for the benefit of my baby and what I feel is right for my baby. So why we don't talk a little bit about that, and why do you ladies learn that we feel that instinct to respond to them, and why it's important to follow that instinct?
Yeah, so I think going into the society thing that you talked about too, I just want to say I remember with our oldest when he was a toddler. We tried sleep training, and it was like, I remember thinking like, oh, at least we waited this long. Like now it's okay because I can communicate with him. And obviously, still your instincts don't change as they get older. It still felt so wrong, and I think so much of parenting with attachment in mind comes down to your confidence and being able to lead them, feeling empowered and feeling confident. And if you're not trusting your instincts, if you're ignoring your instincts, it's really hard to do that, right? Because you're doubting yourself, you're questioning everything you do. Whereas if you honor how you're feeling and tune into how you're feeling, mom instincts are very powerful. So if you're, trying to shut those out, that's obviously going to make things harder in terms of being confident in leading your child in what you think is best, right? And I think sometimes moms maybe get like, if you do something because it instinctually felt right and it doesn't end up working, then I know for me at least, it's like, well, I was wrong. Like maybe I shouldn't have trusted my instincts. But I think it's also important to trust your instincts to know when to make a change too. So if you try something and it doesn't work, use your instincts to make a change then too. We're never going to get it right all the time, but part of following your instincts is eventually getting to the best solution for your family. And just, not automatically assuming because it didn't work out, you failed. But again, I think that's society's narratives coming in a bit too. But yeah, that's kind of my take on why your instincts matter, is so that you can confidently lead your children. And when you can confidently lead them, they naturally want to follow with you. So that makes it so much more easy and so much more enjoyable.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what you're saying, Sarah, like even when we get it wrong when we're following our instincts, that's not like a write-off, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know how many times like Sarah and I talk all day every day, and there's so many times where we're up against challenges in parenthood like everybody else, where we're like, "Oh, I think this is what's going on with my kiddo." And we're like, "Okay, we're going to try it." And it's like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, that was not it. That was not the right answer." But it still gives us information, right? So even when we try things that our instincts are telling us, I really think this might be it, and we kind of miss on some of it, we're not actually any further behind. We're actually still taking steps toward where we want to be, because we do need to take those first steps. We do need to explore. We do need to experiment and see what that right fit is for, because it's us and our kiddos that need to kind of find this common ground that works for everyone, right? Um, that being said, I think that the really important thing about following our instincts is that when we start shutting it down in infancy, when our babies are infants and we're trying to sleep train, we're all of a sudden setting the foundation for the rest of our parenthood journey, where we are not going to be attuning to what we feel our children need. We're not going to be responding. We're severing that relationship, right? And that relationship is truly that core fundamental thing that is going to make your life a heck of a lot easier as your baby grows older. So I think so often we get stuck in the here and now, but from what I have seen working with thousands of families, and I know Sarah, you've probably seen the same, but when we start off by approaching sleep in this way that really takes attachment to heart, that really shows up for our kids, makes room for emotion, supports our children through any big changes that we're asking them to make, setting the foundation for like a really successful path forward with them. Because like the first thing they do is they don't sleep, and then they don't want to pick up their toys, and then they want to hit their siblings, and then they want to do all these things, and those are very normal developmental things that happen. But if we start off by just closing the door away when they are infants, then maybe we can do that when they're toddlers. We can close the door and put them in timeout and walk away. But there comes a time when they're going to be old enough and big enough that that's not going to be influential anymore. So we want to just remember that, like, we're parenting with the end in mind, right? It's a lifelong relationship. Start by following our instincts at the beginning. We're laying that foundation. We're building that relationship that's going to serve us for like many, many years to come.
And I love that because it's both what both of you are saying into first the instincts, and then I love what Sarah was saying about even if you follow your instinct and that was not working, then that doesn't mean that you failed. That means that you have another instinct that you can follow. And Ellie was saying, and that is data, gathering data that will help you to
Yes.
do the best, the next decision
Mhm.
better. And then I love the point that you two are doing, because I see that when you work with the moms and when you work with me and when you work in the community that you have, and that is, it's not about just the sleep. That is what we see, unfortunately, with so
Yeah.
many sleep experts and sleep consultants, and they are like, oh, I'm gonna be here to just fix your child and lay
Mhm.
you asleep. And what I love about your approach is a lot more holistic approach. It's like, yeah, this is one piece of the puzzle that we can work together, and we are going to work in this piece of the puzzle without forgetting that there is a lot of other puzzle pieces that you need to put together eventually as a mom, as a parent. For
Mhm.
the audience that is not familiar with attachment parenting, that both Sarah and Ellie were saying, I will tell a little bit, and then please, ladies, jump in and expand it. For me, attachment parenting is the choice that I, as a mom, have of responding to my child no matter what. And it's more than having that hierarchy, patriarchy, BS of I am the mom and you are the child. How I see attachment parenting is we are equal. And then if you are asking for a need, either crying or upset or in whatever way you are finding it, attachment parenting for me is that ability of me responding to you and being able to help you and figure out how we can do this together. What are your thoughts, and what you can share on what is your takeaway on an attachment parenting that support this part of helping our babies to sleep?
Yeah. So attachment parenting for me, and I think Sarah will have a similar answer, but she'll
Yeah.
jump in here after, is all about the relationship, right?
Yeah.
So attachment is the relationship we have with anybody, but when it comes to our children, it's the relationship a parent has with their child. And in the true attachment parent-child relationship, we actually do see a bit of a hierarchical setup. So we are meant to be the caregivers, and our children are meant to be dependent on us, but that is in a caregiving role. It's not a I
Mhm.
trump you, I am better than you must do all that I say. It's a um I am here
Sinking.
to take care of you.
Mhm.
You are a very immature little being who needs my support, right? So it's
Mhm.
in a caregiving role, it's us offering that. When we talk about attachment parenting, we're talking about building that relationship. So Dr. Gordon Newfeld's work is what a lot of our approach is based on. He actually lays out how attachment unfolds in the first 6 years of life. And understanding that is really, really empowering because
Mhm.
you know that we get so stuck thinking that, if I do this with my baby when they are 6 years old, they're still going to need the same thing, which is
Mhm.
ridiculous, right? Like babies and 6 year olds are totally different. But
Yeah.
when we look at attachment, what we can see is that the way that children attach actually builds on itself so that they attach in deeper and deeper ways as they grow older. So, for example, a newborn infant is attaching through the senses. So, if they can't see us, smell us, touch us, all those things, then they're having a hard time being apart from us. Versus a 6 year old is attaching through, sameness, loyalty, significance, love, and being known to us. So like there's six different ways that they're attaching to us. So they're able to more easily separate from us. They're able to hold on when we're apart. And I think just knowing that can also be reassuring and validating to families because we have seen so many times we'll post something that we don't even think is super controversial and
Yeah.
people get in like up in arms about the fact that are like you're coddling your child when they have to go to school and you're not there for them, like they're not going to make it. And it's actually the opposite, right? We know
Yeah.
that to be true, that the more secure that they are at home, the more we've built that attachment at home, the more they're going to be able to go off, venture forth from that secure base and thrive. So, my little 2 cents on
Yeah.
that.
I think it's important too to like talk about how attachment applies to sleep as well. And I think one of the things too with our approach is that, we obviously don't support families with cry it out, but our approach can sometimes involve tears. And I think that can be a bit of a controversial topic because, you know, if you don't want to do cry it out, a lot of times, and I know this is what I did at first, you naturally resort to like a no cry sleep solution. Whereas I think it's really important to talk to parents and change your perspective on tears about how part of having that really secure attachment is providing them with emotional security so that they can cry and have that unconditional love, and that they, you know, can show you all their feelings and all their moods, and you're going to be responsive through all of that, right? So I think, you know, sometimes if people say attachment focus, they automatically assume we mean constantly co-sleeping, constantly baby wearing, you must nurse your baby, all of those things. And those can be great tools to help foster a secure attachment based on, you know, what's going to work for you. But it's also so much more than that. It's that unconditional love, that emotional security, that dependence, so that they have a safe place, a home base, all of those things. So I think, you know, it's more than just what some people assume to be attachment defined by, again, like those certain parenting practices, which again can be great. But I think it's what I enjoy most, I think, about sharing about our approach is how to support emotion, understanding the role emotion has in your relationship. And I think Elli and I have both said that understanding emotion on a deeper level and how to support emotion was the biggest game-changing aspect for our parenting. Yeah, so I think that's a big part of the attachment for us is the emotion piece and understanding that and how that plays into sleep and making changes so that everyone can thrive.
And I love what
Because
you're saying. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to add one last point to that. I think that when we do that, then we really can break free of any societal expectations of how they should sleep or where they should sleep or what those day-to-day interactions can be, because we just really get to find like, this really works for me. I love this, so we do that. Or I was loving this and now it's not working anymore. So you don't have to continue any piece of anything that stops working, and having that really deep understanding, like Sarah said, of emotion and how making changes works and how we can support our children through making those changes really just empowers you to just live in the moment. You don't have to live in fear of the future because you just know that, you know, this works for now. If it doesn't work in the future, we'll change it then, right? Because so many
Yeah, I
people get
think,
stuck thinking like,
yeah,
oh, I don't want to do this for 2 years, but it's okay right now. So you can do
yeah.
it right now.
Yeah, that's like with the co-sleeping, like if you're enjoying that, that's great. Like I said, it's a good way to help foster your attachment. But if in 3 months it stops working for you, you don't have to worry about harming your attachment. You can make changes while still protecting that attachment and find something that works for you while still staying connected. Because I think so many people assume change means cry it out, change means separation. So then sometimes we avoid a change, and then that's where parents really struggle when they can't make a change that they need to make.
And I love what you both are saying, because one of the beautiful things, and I want all of you mamas to write this down, because that is a fine line that society knows and triggers us in. What Sarah was saying is very powerful. Sarah was making a big distinction between cried out tears and tears of a baby when you are there to support
Mm-hmm.
them and to help them. And why is different? Because the cry out is like Ellie was saying before, you just lock the room, leave them alone, and no matter how much they cry, they are by themselves alone. What Sarah was saying is that is different, that when your baby is with you and is crying and you are there saying, yeah, I know this is so. I want to talk a little bit more about that. I have so many things I want to talk with you ladies. We're going to talk a little bit about the first kind of 12 months and what is normal for a baby to do, and where are our, what is society expectations are versus where the reality is, for mamas to
Yes.
understand how their babies normally will move through a sleep on the first 12 months of their lives.
Okay. Do you want to start or do you want me to start and
Sure.
you can jump in as we go?
You start. I feel like
Okay.
you can nail this good.
Okay. So in the beginning, the first 6 to 12 weeks of life, your baby actually doesn't have a circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm is our body's internal clocks that distinguish daytime from nighttime. So it's very common for families with newborns to say that my baby sleeps all day and then just wants to hang out all night. And that is normal because they don't know the difference. It's not that they have their days and nights backwards, they just simply don't know that it's daytime or nighttime. It's all the same to them. But that smooths out somewhere between 6 to 12 weeks, sorry. And then they start organizing daytime patterns and nighttime patterns. Um, you will see in a lot of newborns that they will start sleeping progressively longer stretches of sleep, but then there's some who will still wake up, every 2 hours all night long, sometimes even more often as the night goes on. But for a lot of families, what they do see is starting to get a longer stretch of sleep around the 3 months age. And then what happens, just to keep everyone on their toes, is baby sleep actually changes. There's a big change in the brain where babies start to sleep a lot more like adults do, and they cycle through sleep cycles. So versus as newborns, when they're just either awake or they're asleep, now they're cycling through lighter and deeper stages of sleep, which is coined as the 4 month sleep regression. We like to think of it as a progression because things are changing and progressing for your baby. But what we see a lot, and what is very, very normal, is that babies all of a sudden wake a lot more than they did at 3 months. And this can be very disheartening for a lot of families because a lot of the information out there says that by 4 to 6 months of age, your baby through the night. So what ends up happening is we have this expectation going into parenthood that, it's the newborn stage that's really hard, and then my baby should start sleeping through the night by 4 to 6 months. And that's when the wheels fall off of sleep. That's the hardest time of sleep for any family, or for most families. I think some families struggle a little bit more later, but for so many, both my kids, 4 to 6 months was the hardest time for sleep. And then that is the prime time that you have the sleep training industry sitting here like, oh, your baby's still not sleeping through the night. Come, let me sell you something that you don't really need because what your baby is doing is normal, right? So, of course, if you're not getting enough sleep in that time, you can make
That's
positive changes. You
enticing.
can set those foundations. And of course, it's going to be enticing to like jump over and do that if you think the expectation is sleeping through the night. My baby's waking 5 to 6 times a night, and like, what am I doing wrong? You feel like you need to make a big change. And that's actually what I fell into when my first was a baby. But if you know that, yes, it is hard, it's very tricky for, a 6 week period of time, but then things start getting easier. It's a little bit more bearable. You can ride it out a little bit more knowing that this isn't going to be forever, right? Which is the narrative that society paints, is that if your baby's still waking at 4 months, they're going to wake forever until you sleep train. And it's not true. The other things that are common between 4 to 6 months is that we start to see some babies who were contact nappers start to be able to sleep a little bit more independently during the day. Not all of them, but they start to be able to do this if that's something a family wants to happen. So that's great. Just if you need that time just to have like half an hour without your baby touching you, which is great. And then after in that 6 to 8 month range, for some families, we do see an improvement in sleep. Some families say that, things smooth it out a little bit. There might be some interruptions for teething or just a couple developmental milestones, but that's kind of like a little bit of a lull before we get to the 8 to 10 month sleep progression, which is just this period of immense development all at once. So when we look at, a 6 or 7 month old baby, and then we look at a 10-month-old baby, there's like a very notable difference, right? So 6 month old babies are maybe rolling around. They're mostly on their belly still, like just kind of hanging out, doing their thing. But then a 10-month-old baby is often pushing to sitting, they're crawling, they're pulling up to stand, they might be cruising on furniture, and some are even walking by that stage. So to go from not being able to really move your body all that much to all of this mobility just really takes a lot of brain development. And whenever our brains are developing, that comes out a lot in sleep. And I think we can all relate to that even as adults. Like if you have ever taken a course or you're working on a project you're really excited about, you might wake up in the middle of the night being like, I have this brilliant idea and I have to, like, I can't calm my brain, right? And the same thing's happening for our babies. And then we again see things settle down temporarily with a little blip when they start walking, because walking's another big sleep
Yeah.
disruptor. But overall, you should be seeing, the trend should be toward slightly longer and longer stretches of sleep over time, with the expectation of, there are phases where things are going to feel a little bit rougher, but those usually are short lived if there's no bigger underlying issue that you need to address.
Yeah, I think a big takeaway from that is that it's not linear. I know, like, sometimes it's like they slept through the night, I've crossed the finish line, I win the prize. Like, it's the end goal, right? Whereas, like, great if that happens, great. And I think it's unfortunate that they, at 3 months they often will sleep through the night because of the way development is happening. So then you think, okay, great. And now we assume they're always going to sleep through the night. So having that understanding that, enjoy it while it's happening, enjoy those good phases, knowing that it's not linear, things come and go, so many changes happen, and knowing that, then you're not feeling defeated or things are completely falling apart when things do change, right? So, yeah, I think the overall trend being it's not linear, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that's super powerful, because one of the things that I want all the mamas hearing to pay attention to, because that was so frustrating to me, because I was blessed enough to know the pattern and the cycle with Sarah and Ellie before the 4 month. So when my baby was 4 months, I was so angry to see all these ads and all these groups of saying, like, all these, the system is designed to push sleep training when the moms are the most vulnerable, most
Mhm.
exhausted, most tired, most hopeless. And it's, I remember crying, telling my husband, like, I feel that they're manipulating us, they are taking us in the moment that we are most vulnerable, and using that for their profit and to hurt our relationship with our kid. So it's powerful that all of you know that. So when that happened and you are exhausted and you are crying and you think that you will never sleep again, that you at least have that part that both Sarah and Ellie are saying, that it is normal, it's not going to be like that forever. Actually, I
Mhm.
think that was Sarah, one time that we were in a discussion in their community, and I think it was Sarah or Ellie, I don't remember. And one of them was like, well, we were talking about rocking a baby to sleep, and they were like, well, I never saw a college student being rocked by their mom to sleep. So don't worry about it. And for me, it was genius, because after that, I started making it like a funny, smart answer for me. And I told him, like, you know what? I'm going to stop when he goes to college, because I'm not going to
Yeah.
go to college with him. I'm not going to rock him in college. So if he goes to college, that day we will stop rocking. Before that, and then people like kind of look at me weird, but it's that concept of that expectation. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
that.
I
What
think it's
about
important. Sorry, I was
no?
just gonna say, knowing that, and I always like to compare a third with my other two experiences because I'd learned so much and experienced so much more, that it is really interesting to notice the difference. Like, during the 4 to 6 months with him, it's like I knew that this was probably the hardest phase or one of the hardest phases with him. And it is so much easier to be like, okay, what tools can I use? Who can I ask for help? What can I do to help me versus trying to fix him, right? And knowing that it was a phase. And then I was also gonna say too, like, with the college comment, like, our 6-year-old, he's starting to say, like, no, I'm good, you can leave. And I never did a single thing. Like, I ask him to stay awake and wait for me after putting the baby down to stay awake. So yes, they absolutely do get there on their own if that's what you want. But obviously you can help, encourage change along the way. But yeah, the whole college comments are so funny because it's like, do you see that happening?
I think that we never see it, but it's still that is the tool of fear that is being
Yeah.
used regards you are going to ruin your kid. Let's gonna talk a little bit about the difference on how we can support our kids sleeping. And one thing that I love that I want to expand with both of you is what Sarah said about looking in the mirror, and instead of fixing them is how we can have tools for ourselves to help us to cope. And part of that is what we have been always talking, and all of you in the audience know that I'm a big proponent of us having a team supporting us. Like, I was talking with a couple of my clients, and then I was telling them, like, what is the hardest job in the world? And then everybody was like, being a mom, by far, being a mom. Then I was like, okay. And I was like, and what will you think about athlete, Olympic medalist that say, oh, I don't need a coach. I don't need a team to help me to train anymore. I got it. I'm going to do it by myself. They were like, well, they probably will not perform very good the next time. I'm like, yeah. What about a CEO? What do you think about a CEO that says, you know what? I don't need a team. I don't need a board. I don't need somebody to help me. I have it all figured out. And they were like, no. I'm like, you will never expect that from them. Actually, you will question them if they just
Yeah.
do that, and
Yeah.
still you are saying that the most difficult job in the world is being a mom, and you are expecting a mom to do it by herself. Where is her team? Where is her support? Where is her board that is there to help her? And that is what we need to build, that team. And I always tell
Yes.
you, having a coach, having a sleep expert, having a doula, having a lactation consultant, they are going to be the people around you to support you and hold you for the times, like Sarah was saying, where it's hard. Instead of you fixating on how I can fix him, because the reality is he's not broke or she's not broke. You don't have to fix him.
Exactly.
How I
Yep.
can just pull from my team and find a way to center myself to support our journey together. So why we don't talk a little bit about that, and what, how we can support the sleep on their babies without breaking our attachment with them.
I just want to say before we dive into that too, I think that's extra important for parents who choose not to sleep train or are trying to gentle parent, because it can be extra isolating, being the one mom at the park who isn't sleep training, or the one mom not using, timeouts or something like that. So I think that's great that you chat about that so much. But in terms, like, so are you asking supporting them with sleep during like a regression or in general?
I would say just in general, and if you have like, because one of the things that I would love to, because I know that both of you are also like a little bit in the nerdy side, is I want to talk about how that support is also helping them with their brain, and then versus how their brain reacts when we don't support them, when we don't respond to them, when we leave them. So then, because I am a proponent of respecting the mom, every mom choice. And even when I choose to not sleep train, if a mom chooses to sleep train, I respect her. And
Mhm.
one of my mission is making sure that every mom had enough information and data to make a choice based on what she thinks that is best for the kid, instead of based on fear of, I'm fixing my kid, I'm breaking my kid.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. And so I think that there's a lot to this, right? So, um, I think what we need to do is like just a mini self-soothing lesson, because I think that's one of the biggest things that is sold through
Good
sleep
call.
training, right? And self-soothing is this big, big idea that, if you leave your child on their own, they will soothe themselves to sleep. And before we get into Ellie jumping on her soapbox and doing this little rant, we need to be very, very clear that self soothing is soothing oneself from a heightened state of stress. So, what I mean by that is I get upset, I feel upset, and I come back to calm on my own, right? And that is not something babies can do. Okay, so let's just pause and hear that again. Babies cannot go from a heightened state of stress back down to a calm, regulated place on their own. The part of the brain that is responsible for that is just not even formed. So, like, people argue with me about this all the time. It's just not even possible. It's not physically possible. What some babies can do, and usually it's the ones that are easygoing, more of soothers rather than signalers, they can, from a state of calm, they can soothe themselves to sleep because they're easygoing babies and they're already in a calm state. What does not happen is we never see a baby escalate, 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 realize, okay, this isn't worth getting so upset about. I'm going to calm my body and come back down. What can happen is they can escalate, escalate, escalate to the point where they get flooded. And when that happens, the body's survival instincts are kicking in. They're not learning anything. Their body saying, we cannot sustain this level of upset. We cannot expend this much energy, and their brains actually kick in and shut them down, and that's where we see them fall asleep. Which, it's not them learning something. They did learn something. They've just rendered their efforts and have gone to sleep as a result. That being said, we can teach our children to self-soothe over time. That we do that is through multiple, like hundreds and thousands of instances of us soothing them, right? So what happens in the way we actually do teach self-soothing and that emotional regulation is, as babies, they get upset. We come over, we soothe them, they come back down. They co-regulate with us. They come to us who are in a calm state, ideally, and we'll talk about, all the reasons why we're not in a calm state all the time. But the more often we can connect that loop for them where they get upset, we help them calm down. They get upset, we help them calm down. That starts wiring up in their brains that, we get upset, we calm down. And then eventually, as their brain keeps building, like it's building at such a fast speed, eventually that builds the foundation for self-soothing as they get older and as that part of the brain comes online. Where, are they going to do it every time? No. Do you know a ton of adults who don't do it every time? Yeah. I do. But they start building that capacity and that ability to do so. So I think that's just really helpful to know, because I know so many families are just really, really stressed that they're not sleep training because they're not going to teach their kids this like life skill, self-soothing and emotional regulation. And that's not how we teach that piece.
Yeah, I think to jump in, Ellie, too, it's like, so many parents, I need to teach them to self-soothe. It's my job to teach them self-soothe. Okay, you can, but it's not how society kind of projects that that's how you do it. You can help them with that skill, but it's not by leaving them to figure it out on their own. It's by soothing them over and over and over and over again.
And we even say often that like our society's obsession with self-soothing needs to be shifted to parents, right?
Yes.
So the first year of your baby's life is an excellent time to work on self-soothing. But your ability to self-soothe, your ability to self-regulate, your ability to notice your triggers and figure out what you need to come back down. Because parenting, if nothing else, is such a self-improvement journey. Like I have grown as a person more than I have in my whole life, I'm pretty sure, just all as a result of being a mom. Because you noticed, like, if I'm not eating and I get hungry, I'm going to be very, very irritable and very, very short with my kids. If I have a fight with my partner and then my kids try and ask me something, I'm going to not be so happy. And we need to start realizing like all of these feelings and emotions within ourselves, because our kids don't deserve the repercussions of our dysregulation, right? Yeah. They deserve us to do our best to stay in a regulated space. And just looping back to what you were saying, Joe, at the beginning, is that we can't do that all by ourselves. So like, let's put that idea that we should be superhuman parents who are showing up for our kids all the time, who are doing all these crafts, who are getting every holiday right, who are, showing up, responding 24 hours a day and not taking a break. I think the single best thing I do every week is I let my parents or my in-laws take my kids for a few hours so I have time to decompress, because then it gives me somewhere to pull from. I get some reserves. I get something to share with them, versus when I'm just like, go, 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 you can feel your reserves depleting and you can feel yourself starting to get short with them and not being the type of parent you want to be. So I love what you said. Like, absolutely no CEO would ever have no team. You would be looked at like a fool to have no team. And parenting, it should be the same. Build up that team. Get professionals, get like just family and friends around community, you. Get those people who are going to lift you up. And Sarah and I, like, we feel so strongly about this that like we've built so many communities for families to exist in. And like right now, actually, our membership is open for that specific purpose, right? Where one day when the pandemic first hit, I was out for a walk and I watched a mom with a new baby out for a walk in my neighborhood. And I looked and I was like, how is she going to build where is her village going to come from when everything was closed, right? So that like inspired this whole thing where like we created a space where yes, you can have this village. It might be virtual for you because maybe you're isolated, maybe the people around you aren't doing the same things you're doing, but you need that support. You need those people to lean on when times are hard. You should not be trying to do this all by yourself.
And I think we talk so much about like validating your child's emotions and acknowledging their emotions, but that's what our community does for each other too, is that yes, this is really hard, but yes, you want to show up as a gentle parent. And like, I think one thing that I thought of, Ellie, when you were chatting is that two kind of misconceptions for me was that to have a strong attachment, I needed to be with them all the time. Definitely like self-sacrificer, like never, making time for me. I had to be with them. Like I honestly don't think I left my son, the first one, his whole entire first year, which again was okay. Life was a lot simpler back then, but now with three, it's like I cannot sustain that, right? But our attachment is going to be better if I do things that help me regulate and co-regulate better with them, right? And then the other one is that like even with those efforts to try and take care of myself, there's still going to be times where you're so triggered or you're just overwhelmed and you do lose it. Like, obviously, our goal is not to yell at our children, but I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, right? But I think one really important thing that isn't talked about is that, like, just because you yell or, make a mistake or do something you wish you hadn't, doesn't mean you have to spiral into, like, oh, I ruined the attachment. It's really important to repair after those moments though, and that repair can really help strengthen your relationship too, right? So for example, I would say to our oldest, like, I'm sorry I raised my voice at you, I was really flustered about this, and them seeing that you're human and connecting with them in that way is also really beneficial to your attachment. So I just wanted to share those because those were two things that I didn't really fully understand in the beginning, that you don't have to be with them 24/7 if it means you taking a break so you can better regulate yourself. And when you don't regulate yourself, it's not the end of the world. The repair is what is really important in those moments.
Yeah, I love that. And there are 3 points. And actually, that happened this week because he is not sleeping well and he's nursing to sleep. And he was waking up like every hour, an hour and a half. And my boobies were already empty. And then he keeps sucking. And then they start hurting because he was sucking nothing. And then was a point that I
I know
started
the feeling.
crying. Yeah. And then I called my husband and was like, take him. And my husband was like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't even want to talk. Just take him. And then my husband just take him. And then for a moment, I start feeling guilty about it. Like, oh no, I need to get my baby back. But then I was like, no, I am completely drained right now. I don't. He's with dad, and dad will
Yeah.
figure it out. And I'm going to rest. So I want every mom here to write those 3 points that Ellie and Sarah said. The first one is self-soothing is for you, mama. Self-soothing
Yes.
for babies doesn't exist. That is not what they do because they're not capable to do that. And I think that is going to take a lot of a load from your shoulders
Mm-hmm.
on understanding that. Then the second one that Sarah was saying is about you taking time for yourself and understanding your cup and filling your own cup for you can regulate. And the third one that she said that was beautiful is how you can actually reach out and have the people and the community. And one thing about the community that they had that is so important and so powerful is, unfortunately, we are the minority, the people that choose to do a attachment approach, a gentle parenting, support their kid on sleeping. They are not the majority because unfortunately the sleep training society and that spend billions and billions and billions of dollars every year in advertising and all that. So the majority of the moms tend to choose because they think that is the right thing, other approach. Why that is important? Because you can feel even more lonely,
Yeah.
like Sarah and Ellie were saying. And that is why you can
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, it would be amazing if you have in-person society like this. One day
Not always.
motherhood is going to be so big that they're going to have chapters in every city. And until then what we have is that community online where you can actually, even if nobody in your family, nobody in your friends agree with you, you are the crazy, you are the cuckoo, you still have this safe place where you're like, yeah, this is people like me that see it like me, that can feel like me. Because one thing, and I want to talk about how you can approach this as we start closing up the season, is it's almost in society like if we choose to not sleep train, then we lose our right to share that we are tired or that it's
Yes.
being
Yeah.
hard. It's almost like, oh, but you have the solution and you don't want to do it. So why you are complaining? So I want
Mhm.
you to share a little bit about that, and validating a little bit about those informations and those comments for people when we are choosing this approach.
I think with many things, it's important to know you can feel two things at once. So, like motherhood in general, you can absolutely love your child and still want a break, or you can choose not to sleep train because the attachment is what your focus is on and still be really tired, right? I think society in general gets so focused on, like, well, if you feel that way, do something about it. But no, you're allowed to hold two feelings at once. You're allowed to feel frustrated and still want to keep doing something a certain way. You're allowed to find it really hard and you feel frustrated and need a break and still find it, that you love your child, then there's joy there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if somebody is saying things like that to you, you can kindly thank them for their
Yes.
advice or unsolicited opinion, and then say, I get that that's an option. It's not an option for our family. We do things differently. And what would be really helpful for me is if you could help me buy and then list what you need their
Mhm.
support from, right? So I think people will say that because they think, well, why don't you do that? Isn't that a good solution? Most people aren't really trying to shame us, right? They're not trying to be like, well, if you're not going
Right.
to do something, it sucks to be you, right? So just flipping it and saying, I get it. I'm not going to put that pressure on my kiddo, but I do need support. Thank you for bringing it up, and here are the
Mhm.
things I need. I think that can go a
Boundaries
long
are a
way to get
beautiful
you what
thing.
you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are getting closer to wrapping up. And before we wrap up, what I would love for both of you is, what will you share with a mom, maybe in that 3 to 4 month or even older, that is tired, that is exhausted, that is hopeless because her baby is not sleeping? What would be that piece of wisdom, of that piece of advice
Okay.
on that mom?
I think something that comes to mind when you say that for me is that every time you respond, every time you're showing up for them, all of those things, you're investing in the long-term relationship with them. So every time you take a breath and take the peaceful parent route, or every time you get up again in the middle of the night and support them back to sleep, that's not just what you're doing in that moment. You are building such a strong connection, such a strong foundation that's going to serve you with your child for such a long time.
Yeah. And then I'll just share what I think was like the biggest shift for me is that you don't have to have all the answers because you are the answer.
Yes.
And that's from Dr. Gordon Neufeld. So often we're like, what do I do? What am I doing wrong? And
Just be
just by
there.
being there, you are
Yeah.
doing so much for your babies. And it does get easier. So if
Yes.
you are struggling right now, I promise you it gets easier as they get older. Challenges shift, there are still different things, but
Yes.
it's not the
Yeah.
same level of physical demandingness that it is in those early stages of
Mhm.
infancy.
Mhm.
Ellie, Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank
And
you.
for everybody that is hearing, please listen to me. Even if you are pregnant, this is the time for you to learn from this lady. This is the time for you to get prepared and a plan about how you're going to address the first 12, 18 months of your baby's child. If you want to reach out to Ellie and Sarah, go to www.myconnectedmotherhood.com. They are having right now their community membership open, and it is an amazing opportunity for like a ridiculous investment on how low it is for them, because their mission is helping you. And for all of you, thank you for being here. Ellie, Sarah, it was a pleasure to
Thank
have you
you.
here. A lot
Our
of love
pleasure.
to both of you, and thank you for what
Thank
you're
you.
doing in the world, not only for the moms but for the next generation.
Yes.
This
Thank you.
show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and leave it.
Thank you.